Hello. Last time we talked about how, in many cases, parents are the only gateway to society, the final stronghold and a haven for children with disabilities. And I mentioned that if you try to establish this kind of relationship only when your child reaches adolescence, it will be too late. So it needs to be built up from kindergarten or elementary school. Now, once a child is able to have a healthy dialogue with their parents like this, we can move on to the second point. That is, rather than following the parents' desires, it is about acknowledging the child's difficulties and providing them with various options so they have the opportunity to make their own decisions. At the same time, it means supporting them so they can have a variety of experiences. And it means becoming a supporter who helps your child accomplish what they have chosen for themselves on their own. This aspect too is not very apparent during elementary school, and it is difficult for parents to recognize its importance. Although it becomes clear in middle and high school or adulthood, I am sharing this with parents of elementary school children because it is best to maintain this approach from an early age. Of course, this also applies to parents with middle and high school or adult children. Parental ambition is, in fact, for the sake of the child. And from the perspective of societal standards, the parent's judgment is likely correct. However, regardless of right or wrong, what should a child do if it is difficult for them to follow such parental ambition? I believe that rather than simply not wanting to do it, the child is likely in a situation where it is difficult for them to do so. Therefore, I think the first and most important step is to carefully observe your child and acknowledge their difficulties. This is the biggest hurdle to overcome at the beginning. That does not mean, however, that we should avoid challenges just because the child is facing difficulties. I believe that, depending on each person's situation and level, there is always a need for challenge or taking on new tasks. Even ordinary people are constantly challenging themselves and making efforts. Here I would like to talk about the concepts of chosen hardship and imposed hardship. Whether it's studying, doing art, playing music, engaging in sports, running a business, or working at a job, everyone endures hardship as they move forward. The only difference is the intensity of those challenges. World-class athletes, of course, have talent, but to become the very best, they choose for themselves to endure tremendous hardship. I would like to call this chosen hardship. However, you can't force such hardship on everyone. If someone is forced into this kind of hardship against their will, that is imposed hardship. In many cases, these two are mixed together to some extent. However, our children with developmental disabilities have most likely lived amidst imposed hardship. There is a high chance that they have had little to choose for themselves, or perhaps never even had the opportunity to make choices. Some people may ask how a child can make choices if they are unable to express themselves. But perhaps the focus was not so much on trying to find out what the child wanted to express, but rather on what the parents thought would be good for them. To better understand how a child in this situation might feel, I tried to imagine myself living the life of a child with developmental disabilities. From kindergarten on, I am dragged from one program and therapy session to another, none of which I want. Even if I want to say that I don't like it, I can't express myself, so I feel frustrated. I try to express my difficulties by crying, shouting, or sometimes in even more intense ways. But my parents or others think it's all for my treatment, so they ignore my struggles and force me to go through with it. Nothing changes when I enter elementary school. Now, I have to be in a classroom with even more students, and although I don't understand what the lessons mean, I still have to be there with everyone else. I'm not really interested in playing together with others. Even if I try to join in and play, the other kids don't include me. If I have a bit more cognitive ability, this is when I start to experience the sense of loss that comes from being rejected. It gets even worse in middle and high school. Schoolwork becomes more difficult, and as the other kids hit puberty, they have a hard enough time taking care of themselves, making it even harder to become friends with them. It's hard to get into college, and it's hard to find a job. It's not so much that I don't want to, it's that I can't, and that makes me frustrated. There are no friends to talk to about my struggles, or to understand me. The reason I'm going on at length, sharing my feelings and thoughts from the perspective of a child, is that, surprisingly, including myself, we rarely ever think about it this way. I think it's because we're only focused on treating our children or on making them fit the direction we have in mind, And sometimes we're more focused on our own difficulties than on how hard things are for our children. Also, when I say this, it might sound contradictory because last time I talked about creating as many opportunities as possible for your child to be in environments with typically developing children. But now I'm telling you to acknowledge your child's difficulties. What I'm trying to say is that everyone's situation is different and that we should carefully observe our children and help them navigate their difficulties. In that process, I'm suggesting that, if possible, an inclusive environment with typically developing children is beneficial so that your child can be exposed to a variety of stimuli. Even if you encourage your child to do something that is difficult for them, if you understand your child and help them, gradually accept it, step by step, they can overcome those challenges. I am talking about the difficulties that may arise for your child if you ignore all of this and proceed at the parent's pace and intensity. Now let's try changing our perspective. I thought about what I would want from my parents if I were living the kind of life described above as that child. I would probably want my parents to understand that it's not that I'm not doing things because I don't want to, but that I also want to do well like my friends, yet I just can't. And then I would express that I dislike certain things and prefer others. But then my parents tell me I can't do the things I like and insist that I only do the things I dislike. So in the end, regardless of what's right or wrong, wouldn't my life become one where I can't do what I enjoy and am forced to do only what I dislike? In this way, our children have had little chance to live a life of their own choosing. Most parents of children with disabilities try to protect their children from almost every danger for the sake of their safety. Ordinary people eat unhealthy food as they please, overeat, drink alcohol, smoke, stay out late at night, engage in risky sports or hobbies, and even do drugs or worse. But our children with disabilities can't do unhealthy or dangerous things even if they want to, because parents block all of those things for the sake of their children's health and safety. We can't even say that this is wrong. After all, those things are definitely bad. But then, have we only ever done things that are healthy and safe? I think that if my parents had watched over everything I did, only given me things that were good for me, forbidden anything bad, and never let me try anything risky, I probably would have gone crazy. What I am most grateful to my mother for is that she didn't interfere in my life. So am I saying that we should make our children do bad things? I'm sure you all know that's not what I mean. What I'm saying is that it's important to have a variety of experiences, and in doing so, you might make wrong choices, experience failure, feel regret, and also a sense of accomplishment. That's what life is all about. Taking responsibility for one's own choices is only natural. But children with disabilities often have nothing they've chosen for themselves, so there's nothing for them to take responsibility for. Especially for our children with developmental disabilities, they experience a lot of rejection from a young age. As a result, one of the things that often happens, particularly in the case of those with higher functioning, is that they don't want to interact with others. Because avoiding contact altogether hurts less than being rejected. It's a situation that's completely understandable. Nevertheless, or rather precisely because of this, I think it would be good for our children to build resilience to rejection from an early age. It's a difficult thing to talk about. Still, it seems there is no other way. Being rejected means that you tried something, and since not everyone can succeed every time they try, it's important to practice brushing off rejection and failure and getting back up. To do that, you have to try a variety of things. But it's important to let your child choose what to try at their own pace and intensity. I am simply grateful that my child is increasingly willing to try new things, to experience failure and rejection, to overcome them, and then to try something else again. Of course, it's possible that my child was always like this from the beginning. Or maybe it's the result of our parenting. There's no way to know for sure. Still, I am doing my best to stick to this approach. So, let me share with you the direction I have in mind. The main guiding principle is to help our children live their own lives independently. This does not mean leaving children to do whatever they want or neglecting them. Children are not in a position to figure things out on their own or to carve out their own lives just yet. Therefore, it is the parents who need to help gather information and come up with alternatives. And parents should also help their children make choices. It's not just about letting them choose on their own. It often requires a lot of explanation and sometimes even a bit of persuasion. In this way, we should help our children with developmental disabilities to live a life of chosen hardship, as mentioned earlier. Since our children with disabilities also develop, we need to help them continuously take on challenges appropriate to their individual situations and levels, allowing them to gradually choose hardships they can handle on their own. That hardship should also be at a level the child can endure, and we must be attentive so that the child can feel a sense of accomplishment from overcoming that hardship, enabling them to take on the next challenge. It should be neither too fast nor too overwhelming. It's about finding a level where your child doesn't suffer from excessive stress due to pressure. There is no single right answer to this. It will be different for everyone, depending on their individual circumstances and degree. That's why it's truly difficult from a parent's perspective. While there are things children need to work on, there is even more that parents need to strive for. Rather than focusing all your energy on trying to fix your child, it's more important for parents to get to know and understand their child better, to provide various challenges appropriate to their situation and level, and to carefully observe the process, checking whether the situation is suitable for the child, whether they are facing any difficulties, and having conversations about it. There will be things your child likes and things they are good at. Those are the means by which your child can communicate with society. And as parents, you serve as a bridge, helping your child connect with society through those means. Children also need to learn how to accept their shortcomings in a healthy way. The only people who can teach them this are the parents. Or you could seek help from a counselor or mentor. Many parents ask, should I tell others that my child has autism? There are cases where this question comes up. This question is based on the belief that if people around them don't mention it, no one will know that their child has autism. But I believe that people around you usually notice your child's developmental delay or disability before the parents do. Even if you don't say anything, everyone knows. If people around you truly don't notice, unless you tell them, that probably means your child doesn't have a disability. So if you have received a diagnosis, there is no reason to hide it. Both parents and children need to accept this in a healthy way in order to move on to the next step. I think that people who ask these kinds of questions probably still haven't accepted their child's disability. Some parents wonder, why can't my child do this? It seems like they could if they just tried a little harder or if I pushed them a bit more. From my perspective, I think this way of thinking is the problem. If you think of it not as they don't want to do it, but rather they can't do it because it's not possible for them, then you'll actually start to see answers. Because you'll begin to think about how you can help with the things they can't do. Instead of pushing your child, you'll be considering ways to support them so they can do better, which is a completely different approach. It's important to speak gently without getting angry and to become someone your child can lean on and find comfort in when they're having a hard time. How difficult must this be? So you can't help but say that this is not a process of changing your child, but a process of changing yourself. Only when you change yourself will your child change. As I write this, I also find myself wondering how difficult my own child's life has been up to now. My child is 28 years old now, and I wonder how much of their life they've truly lived by their own choices. I also ask myself how much I have approached my child with this kind of perspective. And there must have been many difficulties. I feel truly grateful and proud of my child for having made it through all those tough times so well. When I say this, many people might think it only applies to high-functioning children. However, I believe that this has nothing to do with whether the level of disability is severe or not. A common sentiment among parents of adult children with developmental disabilities is that nothing else matters, as long as their child can live each day happily and without any trouble. Many parents regret having put their child through hardships in the past in an attempt to fix them. That's how important the relationship between parent and child is. Parents are not meant to be therapists. Parents should become supporters for their children. I mean, the kind of supporter who helps their child with what they need as they carve out their own life. A supporter who stands by their child, holding their hand and enduring together when things get tough. In that sense, perhaps we need to be a little less overzealous when it comes to our children. We need to give our children a bit more space. Now, as I wrap up this video, I'd like to recommend 2 movies I've watched. One is a Japanese film called 37 Seconds, and the other is an American film called Awakenings. They're all on Netflix. I recommend them because they make you think about many aspects of the lives of children with disabilities, giving them opportunities, letting them make their own choices, allowing them to have diverse experiences, and even experience failure and the risks that come with it. I encourage you to watch them when you have time. Thank you for watching until now. I'll see you next time with another topic. Thank you.